The Grand Council chamber of the Kelthir Ascendancy was filled with the galaxy's most powerful leaders, nobles, and military commanders when High Chancellor Vorath stood before them with carefully controlled desperation in his voice. "Is there no one brave enough to marry my daughter?" The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Everyone present knew who he was talking about. Commander Sareen, his only child, was legendary throughout the galaxy, not for beauty or grace but for ruthless efficiency in warfare. She'd led the Kelthir military to victories that crushed 3 separate rebellions, personally commanded the fleet that destroyed the Vorten insurgency, and was rumored to have killed opponents in single combat when diplomacy failed. She was brilliant, powerful, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who'd crossed her path. Voreth explained with controlled emotion that his daughter was now 37 cycles old, well past traditional bonding age for Kelthir nobility. Despite her accomplishments, every suitor presented to her had either withdrawn their interest or been deemed unsuitable by Sareen herself, who had exacting standards and no patience for those seeking her hand merely for political advancement. The High Chancellor was growing old, and succession laws required his heir to be bonded before assuming full authority. Without a suitable partner, Sareen couldn't inherit, and the Ascendancy faced potential civil war over succession disputes. So Vorath made an unprecedented offer. Any individual of appropriate rank from any species who successfully bonded with Sareen would be granted full status within Kelthir nobility, substantial territories, and a voice in Ascendancy governance. It was an incredible opportunity. No one moved, they'd all heard the stories. Sareen didn't just intimidate potential partners, she terrified them. In the back of the chamber, largely ignored by the major powers, sat the small human delegation. Earth was the newest member of the galactic community, barely a decade into first contact, considered insignificant by most established civilizations. Among them was Dr. Adrian Chen, a xenoanthropologist who'd spent 5 years studying Kelthir culture. When the silence stretched uncomfortably, Adrian did something that shocked everyone present. He stood and spoke clearly. "I'll do it. I'll marry Commander Sareen." The chamber erupted in whispered confusion. The human, the representative from that primitive newcomer species. High Chancellor Vorath studied Adrian with surprise and suspicion, but also something that might be hope. "You understand what you're offering? You understand who my daughter is?" Adrian's response was calm. "I've studied Kelthir culture extensively. I understand that Commander Sareen is powerful, accomplished, and has standards that haven't been met by any suitor thus far. I'm willing to try, if she'll have me." Commander Sareen was summoned to meet the human who volunteered to marry her. She entered the private meeting chamber with the controlled grace of a predator, and Adrian got his first direct look at the woman the galaxy feared. She was tall even by Kelthir standards, with characteristic long ears that currently angled back in a position he'd learned indicated skepticism or irritation. Her formal military attire was decorated with honors from campaigns across multiple star systems. Her amber eyes assessed him with intensity that made him acutely aware she was evaluating him as both potential threat and potential weakness. "You're the human," she said without preamble. Not a question, an observation delivered with the flatness of someone unimpressed. "My father says you volunteered." "Why?" Adrian met her gaze directly. "Because everyone else is too afraid, and that seemed like a poor reason to refuse an opportunity." Sareen's ears flicked forward slightly, surprised he thought. "You're either remarkably brave or remarkably stupid." "Do you know what happened to the last suitor who wasted my time?" Adrian had done his research. Lord Kevrin of the Centauri delegation. He approached the courtship as a business transaction, presented you with detailed analysis of how the union would benefit his house politically, and seemed surprised when you rejected him for treating you as a means to an end rather than a person. Sareen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "You've studied more than just Kelthir culture." "I've studied you specifically," Adrian admitted. "Your military campaigns, your public statements, the patterns in who you've rejected and why. You don't want a partner seeking power or status. You want someone who sees you as Sareen, not just as Commander Sareen or the High Chancellor's daughter. Someone who values you for who you are rather than what you represent." For the first time, Sareen seemed genuinely engaged rather than merely assessing. "And you believe you can be that person, a human I've never met from a species barely known to the Ascendancy?" Adrian's honesty was disarming. "I don't know. But I'm willing to try if you are. No political calculation, no agenda beyond getting to know you and seeing if we're compatible. If we're not, I'll withdraw respectfully. But I think you deserve at least one suitor who's interested in you rather than your position." Sareen was quiet for a long moment. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm terrified," Adrian corrected with a slight smile. "You're one of the most accomplished military commanders in the galaxy, and I'm a researcher who's never been in combat. But fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. I fear your capability while respecting who you are. Something shifted in Sarin's posture. Her ears moved to a more neutral position. Very well, Dr. Chen, you'll have your opportunity to prove whether your courage is bravery or foolishness. The courtship trials begin tomorrow. The courtship trials were traditional Kael'thir tests designed to evaluate compatibility between potential bonded partners. They weren't easy, especially for someone outside the culture. Adrian faced challenges testing physical capability, strategic thinking, cultural knowledge, and emotional resilience. He wasn't the strongest or fastest, but he approached each trial with genuine effort and grace in failure. What surprised Sarin was his consistency. When he lost a strategic simulation to her badly, he analyzed his mistakes with scholarly rigor rather than making excuses. When he struggled with a physical endurance test, he completed it anyway despite clearly being exhausted. When he was tested on Kael'thir history and got several questions wrong, he asked for clarification on the correct answers because he genuinely wanted to learn. During the emotional resilience trial, a test where Sarin was expected to challenge him with harsh truths to see if he'd break or lash out, she told him bluntly that he was inadequate by Kael'thir standards, that his physical capability was laughable compared to her previous suitors, that the galaxy saw this courtship as a joke. Adrian listened calmly and responded, "You're probably right on all counts, but I'm not trying to meet Kael'thir standards or impress the galaxy. I'm trying to understand you. And nothing you've said changes the fact that I find you fascinating and worth the effort." Sarin's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "Why? What could you possibly find fascinating about someone the galaxy fears?" Adrian's answer was thoughtful. "Because fear is what people feel when they don't understand something powerful. You're brilliant, accomplished, and you've built walls so high that no one's bothered to actually know who you are behind them. That loneliness, that isolation despite being surrounded by people who want something from you, I understand that more than you might think." For the first time in the trials, Sarin's guard dropped. "You're very strange for a human. Or perhaps I simply don't understand humans well enough." "Then we're even," Adrian said with a smile. "I don't understand you well enough either, but I'd like to." Over the following weeks, the courtship trials evolved into something neither expected. Actual conversation. They talked about Sarin's military campaigns, but Adrian asked not about tactics, but about her ethical calculations when strategy required sacrifice. They discussed her childhood as the High Chancellor's daughter, the pressure to excel, the loneliness of being groomed for power while being feared by peers. Adrian shared his own experiences growing up brilliant but socially isolated, how he found connection through studying other cultures when his own felt alienating. Slowly Sarin began to see Adrian not as a suitor seeking advantage, but as someone genuinely interested in understanding her. His courage wasn't in stepping forward when others wouldn't. It was in continuing to show up vulnerable and honest, even when she tested him harshly. One evening, after a particularly long conversation about Kael'thir philosophy and human ethics, Sarin asked him directly, "If we bond, you understand you'll be forever marked as the human who married the woman the galaxy fears. Your own people may see you as a collaborator or an opportunist." Adrian's response was immediate. "Let them think what they want. I'll know the truth that I met someone remarkable who deserved to be chosen for who she is rather than what she represents. That's enough for me." When Adrian successfully completed the courtship trials, not through dominance or superior capability, but through consistency, honesty, and genuine interest in understanding Sarin, High Chancellor Voreth formally approved the bonding. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. The feared commander Sarin, who rejected every suitor from established powers, accepted a human researcher no one had heard of before. The bonding ceremony was elaborate, blending Kael'thir tradition with adaptations for Adrian's human physiology. As they exchanged vows before assembled witnesses from across the galaxy, Sarin spoke words that surprised everyone. "I accept this bond not from duty or political necessity, but because Adrian Chen saw me when others saw only my position and my power. He offered courage not in facing me as an enemy, but in approaching me as a person. That courage changed everything." In the months following, Adrian and Sarin's union became more than personal. Adrian served as a bridge between human and Kael'thir cultures, his understanding of both allowing him to facilitate communications that were previously fraught with misunderstanding. Sarin, influenced by Adrian's perspective, began advocating for reform in how the Ascendancy treated newer species in the galactic community, arguing that Earth's potential was overlooked because of prejudice against less technologically advanced civilizations. Their partnership demonstrated something the galaxy had forgotten. That strength comes not just from power, but from the courage to be vulnerable with someone who sees you truly. Adrian's willingness to step forward when others feared to, and Sarin's willingness to let someone past her walls, became a model for trust between species. One evening,